Okay, good to go. So today marks 832 days since we unanimously submitted this report to the government that contains 31 recommendations on reforms that are needed on online gambling. And last night's Four Corners episode shone a light on the patchy regulation that's entirely inadequate and the conflicted and predatory behaviours of those who actually run this industry. The gambling industry continues to inflict harm with very little accountability, normalising gambling as part of sport, preying on vulnerable people, and being regulated by this cowboy regulator in the Northern Territory, where 6 of the 10 commissioners have owned a racehorse that takes too long to investigate. There are 6 part-time commissioners with no staff at all. And when they do eventually impose sanctions, they are too small to actually act as deterrents. Every day of inaction is a win for the gambling companies and a loss for Australians. We are losing $87 million every single day through gambling. And that's $87 million a day for 832 days so far and counting. And whenever the Prime Minister is asked about this, he parrots the talking points of the gambling industry and he lists a list of actions that have nothing to do with this report. The actions that the Prime Minister keeps referring to came out of previous work that was being done under the National Consumer Protection Framework and were really building on the work of the Coalition. So it appears that the Prime Minister would prefer to finish the work of the Coalition rather than implement reforms from a committee chaired by one of their own. It's time to properly regulate the gambling industry. We need to ban commissions. We need to ban inducements. We need a national regulator so we don't have this lowest common denominator approach in the Northern Territory. And we need to phase out the gambling ads that are normalising gambling as part of sport in Australia. And the government needs to show that it can prioritise the interests of Australian people over the interests of a small group of powerful stakeholders. The Crossbench will continue to call this out. We are not going to be silent on this. The major parties may not want to do anything here, but this is what the Australian community wants, and we will continue to make noise about this.
It's bad enough that the Northern Territory government is running a protection racket for the gambling industry, but worse, much worse, is that the federal government and the federal opposition are also running a protection racket for the gambling industry. Let's not forget that online gambling is wholly within the domain of the federal government to legislate and regulate. And the fact that here we are 2 years after, more than 2 years after the Murphy Report, the fact that this government has not even responded to that report, let alone enacted any of its recommendations, is appalling. And it's not as though the Murphy Report is the only opportunity to do something. You know, in 2020, and again in 2022, and again in 2024, 3 times I have sought to progress a private member's bill in this place that would put a positive obligation on gambling companies to satisfy themselves that gamblers are not gambling with the proceeds of crime. And if they suspect it is the proceeds of crime, to report it to the regulators. And if they don't report it and it's subsequently discovered, a federal court can order the gambling company to return that money to the original victim of the crime, the victim of the theft. In 2020, 2022, 2024, 3 occasions the government had the opportunity to act, and 3 occasions it turned away and walked away. Not good enough. They are genuinely running a protection racket for the mob that run the online gambling companies. Now, I can reveal something new today. I ask you to pay careful attention to this, because in the absence of the federal government acting, I am aware that at least one person affected by gambling addiction, Gavin Fineff, who was on the ABC Four Corners program last night, will within 12 months be launching civil legal action against the gambling companies that he was involved in, and even the VIP managers personally that handled him when he was their client, and will be seeking to sue the gambling companies for the damages so that he can recover that money that was stolen, that he stole, so that he can return it to the people he stole it from. So, it's come to this, that in the absence of effective behaviour by the federal government, the people in jail are going to be taking legal action to recover the money so they can return it to the victims of the crime. So stay tuned to that, because last night's Four Corners program, it's not the end of it. It's not something that the government can think, oh, that'll blow over in a couple of days, because over the next 12 months, you will see the gambling companies put in the dock. They will be put on trial. So I would hope that not only will the stolen money be returned to the original victim of the crime, but also that it will be a wake-up call that they have to act. They have to act. And when I get that opportunity, I'll be tabling my bill for the 4th time and calling on the government to get behind it.
We actually have an epidemic at this point in time in this country, and it's an epidemic of hurt and of harm that is caused by gambling. Our children are being exposed every day to opportunities to gamble. It's changing the way that their brains develop. And young people in our electorates are telling us constantly that they want to be helped with this. They want to be protected from this. In my own constituency of Kooyong, young people have suicided in recent months because of the harm done to them by gambling and their gambling addiction. We know that gambling addiction causes anxiety and depression in at least 40% of the young people who engage in online gambling. We know that gambling addiction contributes to domestic violence and to the breakdown of families. And while our government is complicit with the gambling industry and the lobbyists who are pushing them to protect that industry, the government is complicit in harm being done to Australians every day. It's not just the economic loss, it's the mental health impact of the addiction that gambling causes. And our government needs to step up now and take action to protect all Australians, but particularly young Australians, from this epidemic of harm.
Yeah.
Australians love punching above our weight on the world stage. When it comes to gambling losses, we are the biggest losers in the world. 2 years after the landmark Murphy Review that set out what we can do about this problem, how we can treat gambling as a public health issue that it is, we have a government that has been missing in action. We have a government that is captured by vested interests, captured by the gambling industry, and we have a Prime Minister who is captured by the gambling industry, who hasn't had the guts to put young Australians before the profits of gambling companies, hasn't had the guts to actually work out a system where we can sit down with broadcasters, with sports, and ensure that they aren't surviving on a business model that is predicated on the suffering of Australians and the normalisation of gambling to young people. Do we want to live in a country where we have more young people under 18 who are gambling than playing a whole range of different sports in this country? More young people gambling than playing basketball. That's not good enough. We can change that. We have the numbers in this parliament to do this today, tomorrow, and yet we have a government that doesn't want to act. And you have to ask some very serious questions of the Prime Minister of the Labor Party about what they actually stand for.
Any questions?
We've heard obviously the government's very keen to move on the social media ban on 16, but we've also seen the safety commissioners open that up to quite a broad range of platforms. Do you want to see gambling apps included in this, at least to take away the harm for young people?
It's already illegal.
Do you want to, you take it?
I mean, my understanding is that gambling apps are already illegal for under 18s. So they're finding ways to get around it. This is really about normalising gambling for young people, where they truly believe that the only way to enjoy sport is to gamble. And I think over the last 2 weekends, we've had two of the biggest sporting events in Australia, and people who watch them, you're just getting inundated with gambling ads, and people have had a gutful.
Yeah, I heard from a young man in my electorate this week who told me about how in his advanced maths class at a school in my electorate, they put up on the board who was up and down on their bets for over the weekend from betting on sport. And this was completely normalised in the class. The teacher knew about it. Gambling has become so entrenched as a part of sport now that young people don't even realise that it doesn't have to be this way.
We're good? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Good job.
Are you going to do anything in the CDC?